Paul Craig Roberts is an American economist, journalist and author. He is the chairman of the Institute for Political Economy and was Assistant Secretary of the US Treasury under the Reagan administration. I'm delighted to say he joins me now. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, if we can start with the events in Charlottesville, Virginia, and then we can broaden out from there. Someone said recently, cogently I think, that there are probably more white supremacists in the NYPD and the LAPD, the New York Police Department and Los Angeles Police Department, respectively, than there were in Charlottesville. Your thoughts on that, please?
Well, I think the whole Charlottesville event has been misrepresented, because it's a way of further attacking President Trump. And there are, of course, grounds on which he should be attacked, but most of the attacks on Trump are coming on fake news grounds. For example, he is in a conspiracy with the president of Russia. They stole the election from Hillary. We have a Russian agent in the White House. And so on and so on. Another part of the attack on Trump is that, well, he's not legitimate for another reason. He was elected by the deplorables, and the deplorables should not be allowed to outvote the good people. And who are the deplorables? Well, they are the working class, the racist, homophobic, misogynist working class.
Paul, sorry, can I just interject, because you made some very, very, very important points here. I completely agree with you in regards to the campaign and the witch hunt that's been unleashed since he entered the White House on the basis of the baseless allegations that he is a Russian agent and he came to power on the back of Russian interference in the election, rather than the fact that more people voted for him through the Electoral College than they did for Hillary Clinton. But I have to take exception with the inference, I don't know if you're aware of it, that to be working class is to be racist or homophobic. I know that those issues are present in the working class. I am myself. I'm of the working class. But the working class for me is by definition multicultural. It includes black people, it includes minorities, it includes gays, it includes transgender, it includes all the mosaic of America's multicultural society. So I believe it's a kind of false dichotomy to paint it as a working class issue versus those who are non-working class. Many black minorities, most of them voted for Clinton, as you will know, unfortunately in my view, and they are mostly of working class persuasion. So I do worry about this false dichotomy that's been allowed to obtain when it comes to Trump's political base.
Well, perhaps you misunderstood me. I wasn't describing my views. I was describing the views of the liberal progressive left, which is into identity politics. And the way identity politics works is that every group is a victim except white heterosexual males. They are the victimizer. And so this ideology of identity politics does not make the distinctions that you correctly made, and with which I agree, that the working class is very diverse. Ideology of identity politics, they're all white, heterosexual, homophobic, racist, misogynist males. And these are the people that allegedly elected Trump. And so this is another reason, in addition to his conspiracy with Vladimir Putin, that he's illegitimate. So this is the picture that is painted of Trump. I didn't say it's correct. I'm just giving you what it's like to be here in the midst of all of this. Because in Charlottesville, what they've managed to do now, because of one incident that one person did after the permitted rally was over, is being blamed on Trump. It's being blamed on white males who are now all supremacists or Nazis. And this is another nail in Trump's coffin.
Do you not agree, though? Obviously, you're an American citizen, you're a product of that culture and that history, but do you not agree that America is actually synonymous with white supremacy, that it was a nation founded by white supremacists, its constitution was written by white supremacists, and white supremacy is wedded into its cultural and social fabric?
No, I don't believe that at all. That's not been my experience in my 78 years living here.
No. Well, obviously the history of slavery is well known. The history of genocide against the Native Americans is well known. Jim Crow, black codes and so forth. We do know that black people disproportionately are more likely to be unemployed or underemployed. The indicators would suggest that there are structural problems with regard to the issue of white supremacy stroke race.
Look, this is just a product of history, not of motives. And as all historians know, slavery originated among the black tribes. That was the origin of the slaves. They fought each other for slaves. They sold the slaves to Arabs. Later, they sold them to the British and the Spanish. They brought them to America long before there was a United States or a Confederacy or anything else. So this is a product of history that really has very little to do with America. It's something that America inherited. It grew up in these historical things that happened by other people before the United States ever existed. So I think when you try to look at something and read all the history out of it and find motives that were not operative, this is not...
But do you not think it's a failure to deal with that history, Paul, that's a problem here? Do you not think there has been a failure to really deal with that history? I mean, I mentioned Obama in my introduction. I'm a strong opponent of Obama and everything he represents. I think he brought to the White House the sophist language of inclusion, and he brought a veil down over the snarling beast I would describe of US capitalism and imperialism. The difference between him and Trump is that Trump has removed that veil. He is America with its mask removed. I believe they are two sides of the same coin, and I believe the problems when it comes to America, both internally and externally, are systemic. They're not to do with the Democrats or the Republicans. They both pursue the same ends. They just have a different approach. That's my view, Paul.
Yeah, I know that's your view, but I don't think that is correct, and I think it disguises from us the real problem, and the real problem is that in the United States, as in many countries, there is an oligarchy formed of private interest groups, and they rule.
Yes.
They control the government, not the political parties. And Trump's problem is that he challenged this powerful oligarchy, particularly the military security complex, whose annual budget exceeds the gross domestic product of almost every country in the world. I think there's maybe a dozen countries out of 140 that have a GDP larger than the military security complex's annual budget. So when he said, I'm going to normalize relations with Russia, he was telling these powerful interests that he was taking away the enemy they need to justify their money and their power.
Yes, I agree with that. Yep.
So they have unleashed on him all of these forces, and I don't think he will survive. He's now probably advised that the only way he can survive is to become a war president and support their budget and power. So it seems to me that since we are being pushed into a conflict between nuclear powers, that given the strength of modern nuclear weapons likely means the end of all life on Earth, that this is the serious problem that we face, and not whether a statue to Robert E. Lee should be torn down or not. So I try to keep the focus on the most important issue. And Trump did two things that infuriated the oligarchy. One, I'm going to make peace with Russia. And the second was, I'm going to bring the jobs back. Well, that hurts the global corporations. The reason they move the jobs offshore is the labor costs drop dramatically, the profits rise dramatically, the share price goes up, and the executives get millions and millions of dollars in bonuses.
Paul, can I just ask you to hold that thought? We're going to have to stop for a short break, but we'll continue this because I'd like to explore this theme further with you after the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
Hard facts.
Welcome back to the second half of Hard Facts. I'm sitting down with Paul Craig Roberts, author, economist and journalist, and we're discussing the events of Charlottesville and their significance in a broader context. Paul, you were discussing some very, very interesting points with regards to Trump vis-a-vis the military-industrial complex, and that's very interesting because I think you're on ground in which I think is very insightful and very chilling, because there are some parallels with Trump and JFK. JFK was a president who dared challenge the military-industrial complex, the so-called deep state. Now, he was assassinated. Now, up to very recently, I was one of those who was cynical about the conspiracy theory with regards to JFK's assassination. I believed that it was Lee Harvey Oswald, the magic bullet and so forth. But I've now come to the strong view that he was assassinated by the CIA in conjunction with members of the military-industrial complex. He was pursuing a policy of détente with the then Soviet Union, détente with Cuba. He was talking about drawing down America's military presence in Vietnam. And I think he then became a threat to the vested interests that you described. Do you see the same kind of parallels with Trump?
I think it's been conclusively proven by a number of historians who spent their lives studying it. I don't know of any evidence whatsoever that Oswald had anything to do with it.
He was a patsy. He was a patsy, as he said.
It's just an assertion. It's an assertion they didn't need to prove. And in fact, the whole origin of conspiracy theory originated with the CIA moving that into public discourse as a way of discrediting the skeptics of the Warren Commission report that Oswald alone had assassinated President Kennedy. The memos of the CIA in which they describe how they're going to use their friends in the media to silence all criticism of the official story by branding it conspiracy theory were released not long ago, and they were discovered in the archives by a professor in Washington who wrote up the whole story. It's available online. So yes, and in fact, remember, about 2 years before Kennedy is assassinated, the outgoing President Eisenhower warned the American people in his last public address that the military security complex had grown so powerful that it was a threat to democracy. So, yes, clearly Kennedy stepped on their toes. So did Richard Nixon. This is why they cooked up the Watergate to get rid of him, because he opened to China. He was making all sorts of arms control agreements with the Russians. SALT I, the anti-EBM treaty, particularly they were upset when he opened to China. So he had to go. But instead of shooting him, they created the Watergate scandal and got him out on that. So, of course, this is a very powerful group. They have a lot of power, a lot of influence. They have huge budget. And a president that threatens them is in deep trouble. In fact, the New York Senator Schumer warned Trump early on, "Oh, you better watch out. The CIA will take care of you." And that's what we're witnessing. Where did all this Russian conspiracy Trump-Putin come from? It came from John Brennan, the head of the CIA.
Yes.
It was reinforced by Comey, the head of the FBI. These are the people where all of this originated.
How does any president tackle this apparatus of power in Washington? Because what you're really describing is a shadow government, isn't it? How does any president, how is he able to tackle this apparatus of power?
It's more than a shadow government. It's the real government. So how can you tackle it? Well, you can only do it if you are a politician with a movement behind you, and you have been in the trenches for years fighting for leadership, for nomination to be president. You have people who you can trust. There's a movement behind you. You have formed the issues, and you get in on those issues, and then you know who to put in the government, who will help you control this monstrous oligarchy and beat it into submission. That's the only way you can do it. Well, Trump came out of nowhere, no movement. He knows nothing about any of the issues, nothing about who to appoint. He got one guy right, General Flynn, and they very quickly eliminated Flynn. He staffed up with the military security complex. His national security advisor is a Russophobic general.
McMaster, General McMaster, yes.
That's right. The Secretary of Defense is a Russophobic general. The whole thing is out of his hands. They've now got one of the worst monsters of the military security complex, Mueller, former FBI director, as a special prosecutor investigating Trump for possibly treason by conspiring with the Russians. When you're so weak, in such a weak position, because you've got nobody in the government to support you, to back you, nobody in the media, and the media is undermining you with the population, you basically can't do anything. So this is why I think it's a terrific mistake to be blaming Trump for anything. He's not in control.
Well, wait a minute. I have to disagree there. I accept a lot of the points you're making with regards to the challenges that he has faced since entering the White House, but he didn't have to unleash the missile strike on Syria. He did that arbitrarily. He's taken us to the brink of nuclear catastrophe with North Korea. I think he was an eager champion of that, this rhetoric that he's come out with. So I think he's...
You've been listening too much to the American media. That's the media story. That's the American.
Okay.
Look, look, he had to do in Syria just to get the military security complex off his back. They were about to get rid of him right there. They simply told him. Now, what is North Korea about? It's orchestrated so that Washington can put missiles on China's border, just like the Iranian threat was orchestrated so they could put Washington's missiles on Russia's border in Poland and Romania.
But Trump's in the process of undoing the nuclear deal with Iran, isn't he? That was agreed under the Obama.
He's a figurehead. It's being undone by the military security complex.
Okay.
You yourself just explained how Kennedy was assassinated because he tried to make peace.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, why is it any different now? That was 50-something years ago. Imagine how strong the military security complex is now after more than a half a century of entrenched power, unaccountable. Nobody even knows about it. Where are they all? Where all the money comes from? Where the budget is? I was chief economist for the House Budget Committee. We weren't even allowed to know the CIA's budget.
It's about $14 or $15 billion, is it not? It's part of the black budget, $45 billion.
No, and they also have all of these front companies. And a lot of people say they're into drug business and into money laundering. And we have no way of knowing. There's just no way of knowing. I do know that journalist some years ago at the San Jose, California Mercury, who exposed that they were in the drug business, he was completely destroyed, driven out of the profession.
So what's your prognosis going forward, Paul, with regards to specifically with regard to foreign policy? Do you see a very real danger of war, of direct military confrontation?
Yeah, I think that it's extremely high probability of war with Russia and China. And the reason is not just the material interest of the military security complex, it's also the neoconservative ideology of American world hegemony.
Indeed.
So when you have the chief ideology of our foreign policy is American hegemony, and probably the most powerful of the oligarchic interests is the military security complex. Now, I don't think they really want a war. They want an enemy, and they want us always on the verge of war so that their budget keeps going up.
And this helps to foment a kind of social consensus and fear, which keeps people malleable, doesn't it?
That's right, but it also convinces the Russians and the Chinese that we're going to attack them.
Okay.
And, look at the demonization of Russia. Now, what preceded the attack on Afghanistan? Demonization of Iraq, demonization of Libya, demonization of Syria, demonization. They were going to do the same to Iran, demonization. The Russians blocked it. So the Russians are sitting there saying, well, look, now it's us. We're being demonized. There was a report about a month ago from the high command of the Russian army that they had come to the clear conclusion that Washington was preparing a surprise nuclear attack on Russia. Well, if you convince another nuclear power of such a thing, what are they going to do? Sit there and wait on the attack?
But surely there is a kernel of rationality even in the minds of those people, these Western and neoconservative ideologues. They know that there would be mutually assured destruction.
They don't know any such thing. They teach that they can win the war. Many of them say you can win the war. The Russians are too far behind. This is what they told Kennedy. We can win.
Curtis LeMay wanted to bomb Cuba with nuclear bombs, didn't he?
No, he wanted to bomb Russia, the Soviet Union. And Kennedy says, you mean you're telling me not one American city would be taken out? I don't believe you, he said. Yeah, they tried to get Kennedy to attack the Soviet Union because they said right now, they have the bomb, but they don't have the delivery mechanisms we have. We can wipe them out and get rid of it, and this is our window of opportunity. And this was another reason they wanted Kennedy out. He blocked it. He said no.
And then Kennedy also declared that he wanted to tear the CIA up into pieces after the Bay of Pigs. He got rid of Allen Dulles, who was the head of the CIA at the time, and so forth. So he crossed a lot of red lines in their estimation, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, every red line. Yeah, he told his brother that after he was reelected, he was going to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces. So, yeah.
So, Paul, what you're describing here is quite chilling, actually. You're talking about an out-of-control monster, a juggernaut of war and conflict.
Yeah, and it's got nothing to do with white supremacy.
Yeah, but the white supremacy is not just a racial concept, Paul. It's also a political and geopolitical concept. I mean, I think it's white supremacy stroke Western supremacy. I believe them to be interchangeable. But listen, Paul, we have to leave it there. We've run right out of time. It's been fantastic having you on the show. You've been listening to Paul Craig Roberts. I'm John White. Until next time, remember, the only facts worth taking seriously are hard facts.